And now up to our main event, Erik Holtan. I'm gonna read the super official speaker bio. So Erik is a San Diego native and currently designs products for Adobe. He specializes in solving complex problems through a deep understanding of user needs. By starting with a clear definition of the problem and then simplifying its explanation, he crafts strategies and designs that leverage contemporary technology to deliver value to businesses, brands, and products. This approach reflects his commitment to empathy-driven design and impactful solutions. So let's kick off the event and give a big hand to our featured speaker, Erik Holtan.
Well, thank you for the intro. It's almost like ChatGPT wrote it. Sweet. All right. Thanks everybody for coming out here and listening to me talk. It will hopefully be fun and not really boring. We'll find out. I'm Erik, like we have already heard. I'm senior experience designer at Adobe, San Diego born. Been doing this for about 8 years. And I am a new dad. Thank you. All right, so my background here, as you just kind of understand, it wasn't a super traditional background. I started as graphic design. My first job was with Bennett Hedgie Design here in San Diego. He's a kind of cultural, civic designer. He really influenced my perspective on design, what it meant, what it was, how you can treat it. He always told me, you know, it doesn't matter what your website brochure looks like. If someone is pulling into your parking lot and it's hard to park, or the person at the front desk is really rude, they're going to have a bad experience. And so that holistic kind of approach to design really has taken off with me in my career moving forward. Then I moved on to a startup called Slide Genius. I made PowerPoints. That's why there's fancy animations in this PowerPoint. It was, you know, I got to test out my UX design skills. We built a little PowerPoint management software product before all this, you know, stuff came out. Anyway, it was fun, new, and I got to try it out. Then I graduated college with graphic design. I got my first real graphic design job. So I did, you know, did marketing work for MDG, and they did trade shows. So I did like posters and brochures and things like that. I don't like print design, so I started doing websites and everything for them, and kind of moved into more of that UX world to stop doing traditional print design. Then after a lot of hard work and applications to jobs and rejections, I got a job at Appfolio as a designer. I learned a lot here. This was a big change for my career moving forward, grew a ton, and now I'm able to take a lot of these skills, and I work at Adobe doing design there for them. But for today, we're going to talk about a project that I focused on while I was at Apple. You know, people ask me a lot, like, what is it like as a designer day to day? I'm sure a lot of people here know, or if you're new in the space, you're probably interested. Who are doing it know that it's just mostly meetings and a little bit of design. But most importantly, it's a lot of learning, right? You're going to spend time, understand and learn, and figure out the problem spaces. So we'll talk a little bit about that. I'll share my experience as a new UX designer at Appfolio with you all. And we'll go through that process, and I'll show how we built this product that was super successful, and we owe all of its success to our users. All right, so we'll set the stage, right? I just landed this job at Appfolio, right? Brand new job, brand new to it all. And I was super overwhelmed, right? Imposter syndrome was real, right? It's a thing I think a lot of us experience. I was certainly feeling it there. The people at Appfolio are super smart, super talented, and I didn't know what I was doing, right? Not to mention that property management, affordable housing is a lot to learn and understand. So I had a lot in front of me to get started. But the best way to do it is to just learn, right? And so learn while you do. So I started learning, right? I started looking into what I could. I did some trainings on the side, and I just accepted the fact that I didn't actually know very much about what I was doing. So I let myself be a little vulnerable and asked questions, and I jumped into it, right? So we'll talk about the project affordable housing that I worked on. Some of the folks in this audience have worked on it with me, and it was a really fun project. Not because the people were fun, but because the result was fun. Just kidding, the people were fun. All right, the intro to affordable housing, just we'll talk about some of these things, and it's a little, I don't know, arduous. Anyway, there's 3 types of affordable housing we were most interested in. I don't know, there's hundreds of them, but these are the 3 we were interested in. Low-income housing tax credit. This is a new program new-ish in relative terms. There's about 2 million units. It's a tax credit thing, so it goes to the people who build the property. It's cool. I think this is probably the way to do affordable housing in the future and keep doing it. But the thing that's challenging is the property management company has to make sure that the people living here qualify for that, benefit, right? It's not like anyone can just go sign up for a cheaper rent. That's the first one. The second one, project-based Section 8. This is like a legacy program that sort of inspired a lot of the new things. These were buildings built by the government. A lot of it was public housing that converted into these things. But again, the property management company has to manage that compliance. And they have to file something called a 5.9 to the government. And it's a really painful process because it uses very legacy software. And then there's housing choice voucher. That's like the Section 8 tenant that everyone, I'm sure a lot of people have heard of that. That's what it is. You go to your housing thing in the city, you ask them for it. It's like a 15-year wait list, so you let me get it. And then the government manages it all. So basically they tell the property managers what to do. So it's really easy. So the first two are the ones we were most interested in. That's where we had the opportunity to differentiate. And so we identified kind of those different priorities and customers. For the property managers, their biggest priority was getting that compliance right. They wanted to make sure that people who were living there deserved to live there. They earned, they would fall into the right category. No one was taking advantage of it. Also, you get in big trouble with huge monetary fines if you lie. So they want to make sure they get that compliance right. And then Appfolio wanted to get into the, grow their business, right? They wanted to scale up market, expand their TAM. And so affordable housing is something that's done by a lot of larger property management companies because of its complexity. So there was a lot of risk going into this big project. It was going to take a long time, fast changing regulations, a lot of legal concerns, affordable housing jargon. We had to learn a lot. Appfolio is not known for affordable housing, or they weren't at the time. Were we going to be able to do this? Was this going to be something that people were going to understand how to use? Was this going to be something that people were going to want to use? Were they going to pay us for it? Were we going to make money? Did we actually deliver it before we ran out of time? Did we need to integrate with these legacies? Anyway, a lot of stuff. It was pretty intense, but we did it, right? And that's the point of what I'm going to talk about here is how we did this process, how we tackled this risk, and how we went through it without waiting a bunch of time. We did our first release within, a couple of days. We were out publicly in a year after we started this project, which is big. So there was a lot to do. And we just jumped into it. We had a lot of questions. We didn't know what we were going to do. We didn't know how we were going to do it, but we knew a couple of things and we just got started. We wanted to make sure that we were going through this, making meaningful progress, delivering value as we built this, instead of waiting until the end, shipping something that we hoped for. So we did something called dual track discovery. We started with an objective here, and I'll go through what it looks like. We started with the objective. Before we started, we were like, okay, we think we're going to start with the live tech version. It's newer, it's going to be growing, it doesn't require legacy government integrations. That's the thing we want to focus on. And we moved forward doing that. So then that took us into the discovery phase. Once we knew what we were doing, we knew we could go discover, right? And so this is the part we'll be focusing on. This was the fun part, right? Discovery is customer interviews, customer visits, industry compliance trainings, prototype walkthroughs, preference tests, things like all the stuff that you do every day. But this was the fun part. This is where we cultivated that empathy. And we didn't wait to figure that all out before we started writing code. We did delivery sprints during the discovery phase. I think traditionally a lot of what happens is somebody goes and does the discovery and they say, this is what we're going to build. And then you go and build it and then you release it and you find out no one uses it because it was a bad decision. We don't want to do that, right? We want to make sure you're making good decisions, moving in the right direction, always checking our work, always asking questions and always doing the right thing. So that, during the delivery sprints, that looked like doing design studios with our engineers and product managers. If you want to know about how to do a good design studio, you can see my friend Bree here. She gave a great talk on it not too long ago. So I won't talk about it. The engineers, room stories, all that stuff happened, the regular sprint planning and things. We shipped code, all that stuff happened while we were still doing discovery. We've never stopped doing that part. And this is kind of just the way that Appfolio works. So I know it's not always the best way, or not always the way companies work, but this is how Appfolio did it. We love Marty Kagan. This is his method, right? And I think it works. It worked pretty well for this project, so we'll go with it. I hope if you take anything away from this, it's that you can all do this even in waterfall. The real trick is just get involved in the process earlier. You know, the way it usually goes is some product manager or manager comes to you and says, we're gonna build this, can you design it? You have 3 weeks to design it, and then the engineer's gonna go build it, they're gonna take 6 months to build it, and then it actually takes 2 years to build it, and then it doesn't look anything like what we designed. Get involved in the discovery phase, ask those PMs, be a pest, get involved there. That's how you'll get this kind of dual track working, or at least get close to it. But we'll focus on the discovery phase. That's kind of where the magic is happening. I think that's going to be the biggest takeaway. It's hard to move mountains in your organization, but you can do discovery. I feel confident in that. This is where we did that cultivating and build understanding for our users. We walked that mile in their shoes. And that empathy is what kind of motivated us, right? It helped me stay motivated. It helped the team stay motivated. It was something we knew that this was going to be good. We felt like we're making a difference. So cultivating empathy, right? There's a quote up here. Anyway, people have said basically that these pro-social behaviors happen because of empathy. It motivates those pro-social behaviors. And I think it did on our team when we were doing it. So we'll show you what that kind of looked like. All right, so our team is comprised of a designer here. You can tell the designer because they have a paintbrush and also some really sick glasses. And they're, us, right? Most of us, maybe some of us probably aren't designers, but anyway, those are designers, right? You're here. And then you add a PM involved, right? Business all the time. They carry their briefcase. All they want to do is numbers. And then you add a couple of engineers, right? Well, 3 exactly. Don't add more of them. If you add more of them, then you're going to have too many cooks in the kitchen, and we don't want that. And well, God help me if you have more than 1 PM on your team, and if you do, you should probably just quit. Just kidding, don't quit. But kick them out of the meetings. You don't need like a bunch of PMs in your meetings. It's like this to have too many PMs. 1 is enough. You already got I'm sure some know. But we also don't need a bunch of engineers either, right? Because when you start doing these activities to build this empathy, to talk to your users, to get creative, having more people in these meetings means you get less done, which means you move slower, which means you waste a bunch of time. So remind your boss you don't want to waste time because that's what they understand. So we don't need those engineers. So we got this 5 people. You can have a couple more if you really needed to, but I wouldn't do it. Anyway. This is your team. This is the team that's going to be this lean, mean, fighting machine, right? That's what they say. And this is the team that you need to understand everything about the project, about what you're trying to do, what the problem is, how you're going to try and fix it, whether or not it's working, because this is the team that makes the decisions on what gets done. You can't go look to someone else, don't blame, oh, my designer told me this, or oh, the engineer said this, right? Everyone should be responsible for the project. And be interested in it. So what do we do with this team? How are we going to cultivate empathy? Well, it's not just cultivating empathy with your users. You need to cultivate empathy with your whole team. There's often a big dichotomy between designers and engineers, right? Like that's the age-old story. Oh, the designer did this, but that's impossible. Well, they did it that way because you didn't talk to your engineers, right? Like, be reasonable, talk to them, work with them, be humans with each other. And cultivate empathy with your team. Walk that mile in their shoes. Think about what it's going to be like for them to do what you're doing, and then they'll reciprocate the same thing. Right? Building that empathy amongst your team helps building empathy with your users and with your customers. So how do you do it? You just talk, right? It's not that hard. You just talk to your team. Make up friends. They don't have to be like your best friend invited you to a wedding, but find some common ground with each other. Ask questions. Be friendly. Remember that you're all working together to solve this problem, right? You're all together in this situation. And approach it in kind of a growth mindset, right? You're talking to them. You're asking questions because you want to learn what they do, how they work, what could be better. Grow yourself, grow the team, and improve. Building this empathy, like I said, helps you build that with the customers. And make sure you're listening. Don't just pretend that you're doing empathy. It's not something fake. You can do it for malicious reasons, right? Like you're building empathy because you want to build a better product, you want to be successful, you want to get a promotion, whatever. It doesn't matter what the reason for it is. Just build empathy because it's helpful. And don't like kind of work, don't pretend, oh, those engineers are on a different team, they report to different boss, they have different budgets, they can do the fun stuff. Pretend that you're all on the same team, and if you can, try and do stuff together. It's also helpful if you have to customers to your team. You don't have to employ them, you don't have to get HR involved, but figuratively bring your customers to meetings, talk to them, interview them, ask some questions. Also, the same thing you're doing with your team, do with your customers. In this project, I made friends with these property managers that are affordable housing compliance people. I visited a few of their houses. We had a lot of dinner together. It was fun. We got close. It was nice. I knew them really well, and I think because of that, we built a really good product for them. But don't forget, you have to listen to them. So you'll do activities together, you'll make mistakes together, work together, right? You're gonna do design studios, like I said, you're gonna do these activities to grow, to improve, and don't blame each other, right? Like don't say, oh, engineers said they couldn't do this. I hear it all the time. Engineers blame someone or someone else blames someone else because the less blame on me, the better. But if you all own the outcome, it's gonna return a better. So just remember though, while you're doing all this, that you're not all that different. You're just people who are employed by the same company who are just trying to do your best and get a paycheck, right? So have a little empathy about the situation you're in, and that not all times everyone wants to wake up and do their job. Okay, if you do wake up and want to do your job, here's some things that we did during this project that were super fun and super helpful for the project. We did design studios, right? We got engineers in the room, we had them draw. We had PMs drawing, we had designers drawing. You can do stick figures and whatnot. You can do all your dot voting and everything, right? The whole point of this is to help build trust, get people involved, have them have some ownership over the product that you're working on, and be involved in the outcomes, right? Like I think a lot of companies people just get told what to do by somebody. It's someone else's job to tell me what to do. Know what you're doing and have that outcome, right? Like, make that change. And you can do that through these different types of design studio activities, things like that. So after all that process, maybe about halfway through the first year of this project, we finally landed on a customer problem. And this is what it was. Basically, what it comes down to is affordable housing is really complicated and there's a lot of detailed documentation and big findings we screwed up. And so we use this customer problem statement to help hone our focus. We didn't need it in the beginning because in the beginning, we didn't really know what the problem was. We just knew that we needed to do something in affordable housing, right? So we were spending all this time doing it. And so now that we had this, it was still just time to keep iterating. So we look for accuracy over precision. There is a right way. There's also a good enough way. You don't need to spend a bunch of time making sure that your usability tests are like academically significant, right? Because you're not going to publish the results in some scientific newspaper. All you really need to know is if you're closer to making this usable. You don't need to do some big elaborate study for all these things. If you can, do it. It's not your money, it's someone else's. But like, if you're not allowed to, no one's giving you the money, don't worry about it. Like, don't let that stop you, right? Figure out a way to get the questions you have answered, and it doesn't have to be done the way you were taught in school. So we did a lot of tests, where I accidentally asked leading questions. I did a lot of tests where I stopped it midway and said, okay, just click there because you're taking too long. Because I didn't need to, that wasn't the point of it, right? The point was to answer certain questions I had. So I'll show some examples of like some wireframe versions of what we did. So we don't have a lot of issues with this being recorded and Folio is seeing me leak internet screenshots. So this is essentially what the screen looked like the very first time we designed something. It looked really bad, but it didn't matter because we weren't going to ship this design. And I didn't have a boss who was like, Eric, you need to make sure your visual design skills always look good. Anyways, sorry. Minimal research was done before we got there, right? But we just showed a handful of customers this screenshot, and we learned in 5 hours more than we would have learned in months or years of customer interviews and research and studies and whatever, because we just asked very specific questions about very specific things we did. And from this, we went forward and actually started building some stuff. So this is another really low res wireframe of something that we actually had written code for. So after a few iterations of design and design studios with the engineers, we put together our first prototype system. This was shipped in code, this is in the product. We had 5 customers actually using this. In the terms of affordable housing, it was challenging because they couldn't actually use it complete, but we had them, they were nice enough for us to do it alongside their existing process, which was actually really helpful because they got to tell us what was different, what didn't work. It was real-time results rather than them recalling something we did, right? I realize that's a very fortunate situation we are in. Not a lot of people's customers are going to be that interested. And a lot of people probably might not even be allowed to talk to their customers. But I'll say if you can at all ever show somebody your work, it doesn't matter if it's not the same way I did here. Ask them questions. There's a great book called Mom Test if you want to know how to not get lied to by these people where they all just tell you that it's great and it actually sucks. But anyway, so we did this. We thought, how's time? We're doing fine. Okay. So we thought that this, wizard flow would be really good, right? It's a complicated process. Let's do a wizard. That simplifies it, right? That's what all the UX folks tell you to do. So we did it. We thought that was going to be good. We broke up the information. We learned that actually the United States Housing and Urban Development Department heavily dictates how and what you record and store information on. So we added very detailed breakdowns of information. We learned that after the first thing, right? We didn't go build something that was wrong, and we had this put together. Anyway, then we showed it to some customers, had them use it, and we actually attended a few training courses, so we also could do affordable housing compliance management. I could probably still approve someone's tick form if I needed to. But we learned a lot that a wizard actually is the wrong thing to do because you have to go back and forth so many times. You're getting this information in a face-to-face interview with somebody who is applying for affordable housing. So their finances are probably not in order. And you need to get them in order. And so you're going to be jumping between their name. Oh, actually, my grandmother lives with us. Oh, and she actually makes this amount of money. So you're jumping around. Having it in a wizard was taxing. You had to click, wait for page load, or whatever. Even the animation, it was just too much, right? They needed to scroll, quickly move around. It made more sense to not follow UX best practices here. One of the great things we learned from one of the design studio-ish tasks we did while we were at a customer was learn that they do an internal sort of workflow with this, where they send, maybe a lower level employee does the report, they send it off to the manager reads it, responds and says, hey, we gotta change these things. They do it over email, it's very cumbersome, you open the wrong attachment, whatever. Anyways, we added this comment section directly from feedback from them. And I don't think we would have built that without that, right? Without that experience talking to them, them seeing what the product was like, explaining to us how they could do the products there. And we added some other stuff too. One of the big takeaways here was making things really scannable at a glance, right? The people who are doing these aren't as, basically the people who do these certifications did not go take the certification courses that I did, that a few of the team members did. Only the compliance takes, it's like a 48 hours of courses or something. Anyway, it takes a long time, so you don't put like someone who's getting paid about minimum wage out to go do these, you're going to do the job. So then you have these managers who report and check and make sure, but having the computer do a little bit of help is something that's saving a bunch of time. We might think like, oh, we don't need to do the math there because they'll add it all up themselves. It only takes a couple seconds. But if you're doing 100 of them, like they were, you learned you needed to make it quick. So that's kind of a quick little show of one of the sections. There was probably about 5 more things at this scale that we built in the product. But that was sort of that process there, right? As we scaled up this feature and the product and going into this vertical, there became a lot of opportunities for leadership, right? We had just one team. And I mentioned you don't want more engineers on your team because it just slows you down. But what do you do when you need to do things faster? Well, you make a whole nother team. And then you can have 2 PMs in your meeting, but only if they have their own designer to talk to and their own engineers. And then there were 3, and then there were 4. And now we had so many teams available to us, we still had to, we struggle with how do we keep everyone aligned on the same path. We need a little bit of leadership. We don't need a bunch of monarch and then controlling everything. But it gave me and the PM who I worked with an opportunity to grow and lead this group. We were experts in this space, so we were able to help the company grow these teams and also become empathetic in this story, right? If you show that you care and you put in an effort, you have this empathy, it helps you too, because then you get seen as a leader in the team. And you get put in these leadership positions, which is great to get promotions, right? And everyone needs to get paid more because San Diego is living so too expensive, you need more affordable housing. And if you invited 3 more of your friends to the certification courses, you got a bonus. Just kidding, it's a Ponzi scheme. Okay, so the results, just so you know, this actually worked. These are real, I didn't make them up for this meeting. We had 100% pass rate in app usability testing. At the end-ish, at the year point, we had released the whole process, but by the time we called it the end, we did test 100%. And we also had, I guess these are now 3 years old, these statistics, I don't know. Probably can't tell you the updated ones anymore, it's private information, but we had 200,000 affordable housing units added. We thought that probably accounted for at least 600,000 full total units added to the product because of affordable housing. And yeah, so that's it. As I said, I'm Eric, I work at Adobe, and if you have any questions, now is your chance.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
What do you think was it really use your product alongside your business? If that's what you ask, and for them to be like
Yeah.
you know, how did that work?
Just to repeat it, we were asked, how did I get users to use the test alongside their real life process? I'll be honest, I think it's because the existing things suck so much. But also I think it's because we cared, because we had built that empathy with them, because we had shown so much interest in helping them do their work more efficiently. We showed that, we had that empathy with them, like I was saying, they were interested in giving us something, right? They realized we were giving a lot, they were interested in giving a lot. It's hard to have that opportunity when you don't get to build those relationships with your customers. But remind your PMs that this is an opportunity. Remind the sales execs who manage these clients that, hey, like if you're closer, we can do better things. We can, you can close more deals. We can build better products, right? As sales will love to hear that, and they'll let you do it, right? So I think that's kind of how we did it. We showed that we cared, and they gave us a little something in return. The repeat was, how do we do more track? How do we get PMs involved in that? To sort of summarize that. Well, we start by praying to Marty Kagan every morning. I'm just kidding. That dual track worked really well because that's the way Appfolio was founded. That's how they built their products. So it was pretty effortless at Appfolio to do it that way. I have experience not doing it that way. It's hard. You have to get collaboration with your engineer managers, your product managers, and design managers that to involve them in this process and do it this way. If you're like a large organization, you could have like board of directors that can do things with all their stuff which gets really messy. The way you can emulate that process as a PM and as a designer and an engineer is get involved early. I might have mentioned something about triads. No, I think I forgot, but the triad of an engineer, a PM, and a designer, if the 3 of you can get involved in that like discovery process before it gets like prioritized or engineering teams get assigned to it, that's going to be the closest I think you can get without like moving mountains of your organization. Ask them to do you a favor, right? Because I think in a lot of ways, like, only PMs really get paid to do that, like, discovery part, what should we work on, how should we do it? If you go and ask a designer and an engineer to come and help you with that, they're not gonna say no. I think they're all hoping that someone will ask them to do that. And that's how you can get to that, closer to part of that page rank. You'll have to, it's not gonna be exactly it, because you'll still have to deal with the fact that you have these long release cycles, and maybe you can't change stuff along the way as easily. But if you get, an engineer involved early on in that discovery, and they're the manager or one of the leads on that team, and you learn something while they're building stuff, and it wasn't approved to work on, you might find that they'll be interested in saying, actually, okay, let's change it, let's break out of the, and you can start, leading a little bit by example, maybe with that team, and showing the organization that it works.
Another question related to that growth back discovery. How far ahead was you as a designer ahead of the engineers? Were you actually kind of working exactly at the same time as them, or were you more like ahead?
It depended on how many meetings I had that day. No, just to reiterate, what was the question was how far ahead was I working over the engineers? It fluctuated a lot. I think at the furthest point, I was maybe 2 sprints ahead of them. I mean, things were happening really quickly. I was learning maybe the Friday before we would do sprint planning for the next 2 weeks, like kind of what we were gonna do those 2 weeks. I didn't always have designs put together for the new things we learned. Sometimes we were in these sprint plannings, and everyone's like, well, what the hell are we gonna do? And it's like, we'll figure it out on Tuesday after we do our planning. So sometimes it was easy enough to be ahead. It's hard to be that far ahead when things are moving really quickly. I mean, this thing happened within a year, so there weren't that many sprints to work on in 1 year. And the amount of things that happened over that year, the sprint structure wasn't traditionally followed necessarily. We still worked in 2 week sprints and did a retro and everything, but stuff was released. Adaptfolio was released daily, into like their test environment, whatever. And if you wanted an engineer to tell you, there's a couple settings in front of you here, but yeah. So it fluctuated. If I could, I would try and get ahead, but things changed so quickly that even if I was ahead within that week, it might have changed, and I'm now no longer ahead.
Great talk. Yeah, this is super interesting. I actually had a question on the scale part of it. So you mentioned like the one to golden ratio. Someone started burning this other ratio, but at a certain point in the presentation, you show the scale, right? So you kind of use that there and what time scale? So did your team have success? Yeah. Your team had success and they're like, okay, now we're gonna put everyone on this to accelerate the time over here. Kind of talk about this.
Yeah.
One more question. Can you say that?
I can't talk about things in the movies. I'm literally strictly avoiding that. Okay, so how did this happen? How did we scale everything up? I do get to use Figma, thank God. We use Figma at Folio also. Yes, we started with the one team. Things were moving really quickly. We realized that we needed to make more progress faster, and we weren't going to be able to move on that team. I'm going to owe the success of this scaling to the PM. He was very good in talking to his boss. Yeah, well, they all reported in the product. Anyway, I think it was kind of a helpful structure how that worked. But basically, yeah, the PM was like, hey, we need more help. athletics director colleges, so it was sort of easy-ish to reposition that college into affordable housing, so that benefited us. A college is a group of teams. So I think that's how that worked. But yeah, we showed the success. We were working just one team, I think, probably November to January probably was how it worked, and then by the new year, we had 2 teams working on it. And then I think by May, we probably just scaled up before, I think, I don't remember exactly how it all worked there, but yeah, it did slowly happen. Slowly, it was just a few months, but, yeah, we didn't just jump in all of a sudden having four, we showed the success, we showed the opportunity we had available by adding more teams. But crucially, we did not manage the teams. I was a designer on 2 teams, the PM was a PM on 2 teams, there were 2 other, two other designers, 2 other PMs who also worked in the other teams. Because it's too much for one person to manage. But then, even though we were still working on teams, we did kind of affordable housing sync ups. So we just kind of stayed in touch and knew what was happening. But we armed each of these teams with the knowledge and skills to go make their own decisions, do their own work, and not have to get approved by them.
Great talk. What, if anything, would you do differently?
What would I do differently? When we scaled it up, I probably would have tried to get ahead a little more. When we added more teams, at times it felt like we were trying to figure out something for the engineers to do. I think those who were involved in the project that are sitting here remember a large and arduous discussion about tackling tech debt while we were trying to figure out what else to build. I think a lot of that just came from, like I said, it's hard to manage a lot of teams at once. Being on 2 was a lot. Tell that to a lot of companies in the world that 2 teams is too much for a designer and they'll laugh at you, but it was. And so we couldn't stay ahead far enough. We couldn't get enough answers to keep people working moving forward. We did have a couple of weeks where it was like, there's a lot of tech that we move really fast. Go there's a lot of bugs, go fix them, right? Fix it, make this so it's not so hard to work in the future anymore. And then engineers were pleased about that and it worked out. But I think, yeah, if I were to do anything different, it would be, I guess, to have a little bit more focus on getting ahead and saying maybe I can't do 2 or 3 teams. I think one point I don't know, hiring was tough, so the things got a little weird, but yeah, staying ahead a little bit further and providing something up to better, different.
Always good to hear about success stories, but also I'm thinking, when you think about fails, it helps us to grow. So maybe you'll never a little bit about mistakes or fails, some examples, that would be good. Thank you.
There were no failures, we always ask the customer what to do. I'm just kidding. What? I mean, I think every iteration was a failure, and that's why we changed it. But the failure was so small because we only spent maybe a day on it, and we didn't release it to millions of people. So it's easy to forget about the failures. Like I mentioned, that first screenshot that I shared, like, aside from the fact that it looks bad, I think me and the PM at the time thought that this was it. This was gonna do it. This is gonna solve all their problems. This is gonna be easy. All we have to do is deal with like a little bit of technical things about. Honestly, at this point, the hardest part was putting content on a PDF because we needed to export like a tax form, basically, like TurboTax does it. We're like, that's gonna be the part that takes us 6 months. This is done. And then we went to the meeting with a couple customers and realized, no, we were able, it's not gonna do it for us. But we quickly moved on. I think another failure was sort of near the end of us working on this. I don't think we were very good at communicating the value that we would actually deliver. When I say we finished this in about a year, basically, at the end of that year, it was like, management was like, okay, we put a bunch of resources in this. I'm not sure we're actually gonna see enough results out of it, and we stopped working on it at the end of that year. I think had we pushed further for what that value was, we would have been kind of that stopping point. They're back on it now. I don't know, don't quote me on them, but I think they do realize that there's value in doing it, so they're gonna redo it, but, yeah, I don't think we needed to stop, I think we could have done a better job of communicating that up. One of the benefits of that fully was that things are very bottom up decision making, we kind of stopped putting that any further up, so no one knew what's going on, because we were charging the little teams we were working on. And so kind of forgot that people who actually pay us didn't know exactly what we were doing all the time. But I think that's probably the biggest failure that was out there. What kind of KPIs we have in place, to know if we're doing a success. We, did not have any KPIs in the very beginning, because all we knew is that we wanted more units and we wanted them to be affordable housing units. So anything we could do to get more of them was gonna be good. The specific KPIs, I don't know, I'm probably not supposed to say them, so and I don't really remember them because this was 2 years ago. But we were tracking the number of charter customers that we had, and I think. Yeah, I don't know, well, I think we were like, we would do this reporting meetings, like, okay, we want like 5 charter customers in this quarter, and that was kind of how we were moving. A lot of it was around getting people to use our data, basically, that was our KPI that drove us forward. And I think it worked well because if no one wants to use the data, it means it's bad and there's no market fit for it. I don't think we did very good with KPIs. The end of the year of this project, I probably got really big into KPIs, and saw my other projects had really clear ones that I remember very distinctly. But we were like, I don't know, it's still a young enough company where things are a little loose. And so we kind of just, I don't know, it's not helpful, I know, because we didn't really follow the rules, but, sorry, I don't know.
I'll let you moderate.
In my mind. So, in 12 months, we probably have the MVP and V1 and V2. So how do you prioritize what comes to the MVP, what comes to the V1, to the V2? I'd like to hear about the exact options. Like, do you use diagrams? Do you use like what do we use to prioritize? Everything except talking to everybody, listening to everybody. It's good, but still I'm interested in methodology.
So the question was around how do we prioritize and whether or not the MVP would be V1, V2. There were no versions. It was always just what it was. I'm not joking. We released code daily. Everything went to all customers every so often. It was very fast weeks. I don't know. I don't work there anymore, so things might have changed too. But they released code very quickly. So we used feature toggles to like hide things that weren't complete. But we didn't like release V1 and then release V2. Like every day we released more and more things. So sorry, that'll answer that part of the question. But then how do we prioritize? So we would prioritize anytime we learned something new, anytime something like, we would do some sprint plannings and kind of get ahead. And a lot of it started with the design studio. We do a design studio, we'd all come, okay, how are we going to solve the problem we're currently solving? And we would do, the design studios could solve small problems. I did, I don't know, 20 design studios for this project, one every 2 weeks almost. Like, but they got so like, we got really tight in on what problem we're solving in the design studio. And basically, it was just to make sure that everyone agreed with how we were gonna solve it, and if they didn't, they got a chance to explain what they thought might work. And then we would discuss it. And we didn't always do like, they weren't, these design studios weren't like a week-long design sprint or, you know, a 5-hour design studio for the whole day. Like, some of those design studios, like, I saw in our little day, our three engineers, our PM, we were all sitting there not in a meeting, and I said, hey, do you guys have 45 minutes, like, so, like, decide what we're gonna do on this thing. And that has helped us prioritize. Once we got to the point where we were learning a little less, like, we've kind of gotten a bit of understanding of the product space, so not everything was new. Things stretched out a little further, so we didn't have to do them, like, we weren't making decisions day by day, we were getting a little bit further ahead of things. But yeah, we would usually always try to do some type of design studio or brainstorming thing to do the prioritizations. We used Trello to do our cards. We had a backlog. I think when we stopped the project, there was probably 40,000 cards that weren't done, because they weren't needed, or they were probably duplicates because we forgot we made the card and realized it was something we needed to do and made another card. So it was pretty loose, but because the team had a lot of trust in each other, I wasn't worried about managing the backlog. The engineers weren't really worried about being super what's on the backlog because we all knew what problem we were trying to solve. We all kind of knew what needed to be done. This did remind me about another failure. There was a point where there was a disconnect. I thought we were going to go forward with something. PM did not think we were supposed to go forward with something. And the engineer started building it maybe 3 or 4 days. He was on vacation, came back and said, wait, why are we building this? So I don't know. How would I have avoided that? I probably wouldn't. I probably would do the same thing again if I put in that situation. Because like, if I was like, oh, I don't know, I guess we gotta wait for the PM to come back in 4 days. Well, we wouldn't have done anything, or like we would have just been screwing around. So I think it was better to make the mistake for 4 days than just say, I don't know, go work on something else. Hopefully that answered the full question.
You were working on the board, project. Were there any competitors that
The question was about challenge, competitors and any challenges we've had kind of navigating the competition landscape. If you're at all familiar with the property management software landscape, you'll know that the other 3 major softwares all supported affordable housing very deeply. One that's been in the news recently, RealPage, has the leading affordable housing solution. RealPage, if you're a renter in San Diego, well, anyway, you can look up the news. I'm not gonna talk about it. So there was competition. Appfolio had a pretty strict policy of not looking at competition software because they didn't want to deal with like they didn't want to deal with that problem having being sued by the competitors. So I never actually did competitive analysis on what their software looked like. We would talk to customers, they would tell us the things that their software did, and if they were like, oh, let me show you real quick, we would pause the recording of the meetings. Because I also didn't want to deal with getting yelled at for looking at it, because that would make my job harder and I don't want that. So we did. We still didn't like how RealPage worked. RealPage was a leading indicator because they had a large support team who knew affordable housing really well, and basically if you had any problems, we would just call and that was their product. So we sort of navigated it. The big challenge in it was that no one knew Appfolio did affordable housing. So we like would attend trade shows for affordable housing, and we'd be like, "Hey, we're at Appfolio, we do this now." Like, designer became a salesperson because our sales team didn't know enough about affordable housing, our support team didn't know enough about affordable housing. Like, that became more of an operations problem, getting into a new vertical, which I don't think is a very common situation for software companies to enter. especially the larger ones, but, you know, that's sort of how we managed it. We just decided to sort of, I don't know, treat it like a startup. I wasn't paid to be a salesperson, but I've certainly got promoted because our product was successful.
Online questions? No.
Well, thanks everyone for the great questions. Of course, thanks Eric for the amazing.